And there's something beautiful about the people of the south of Lebanon. They're very generous and they really have this attachment to the land. And when you're really attached to the land, that makes you an even more beautiful human being. And I think laughter is important, and laughter for me is as important as first aid when there's any disaster, because we need this moment for us to feel okay. We need this moment to have a little hope to be able to continue going.
Welcome to the St. Martin's Cloak podcast, where we go behind the headlines to focus on humans, not statistics. In today's episode, we're speaking with Sabine Choucair, someone who is dedicating her life to helping children in conflict zones. Sabine is a humanitarian clown and performer from Lebanon, and the founder of Clown Me In, a humanitarian group that performs clowning for children in conflict zones, refugee camps, areas impacted by natural disaster, and post-conflict zones. We hear from Sabine about her own background and humanitarian journey, her work with children in Lebanon and around the world who have been highly traumatized by war, the importance of laughter, art, and storytelling as resistance, and much more. But first, a quick introduction. Good morning, everyone. This is Andrew Loftusness recording from Istanbul.
And this is Miloš Majore recording from London.
All right, Miloš, at the time of recording, we are fresh off our most recent interview. We just got done talking to Sabine, who is also here in Istanbul, a different part of the city than I'm in. I have quite a bit of thoughts, a lot of emotions and reactions after hearing her stories, but how do you feel right now?
Yeah, same. I mean, I'm sort of still smiling. I mean, this is a good one. This is a good interview. And listeners will find out soon enough why. But, obviously a lot of the stuff we talked about, including Lebanon, Gaza, the earthquake in Turkey, like this is all heavy stuff. But the nature of the work that Sabine does and her approach to dealing with all these situations is one predicated on dealing with the trauma of this stuff and creating hope and kind of moving forwards with a positive light. And I mean, you'll hear it. The way she talks in her interviews is very uplifting, and I think it was just a great way of approaching all these subjects.
Yeah, I mean, I felt a lot of different things while speaking with her, and then when we got done with the interview, but above all, in all honesty, I felt hopeful, right? I mean, of course, in this interview and in every interview we do, we discuss very difficult situations, right? And in this interview, we had a particular focus on the impact of war and natural disaster on children. So that carries a lot with it. But, the more we do this podcast and the more people that we meet and talk to, w- the news sucks, right? And there's good reason for that. Most people, I would say, in a position of authority in the government from many different countries or private citizens with a massive amount of resources who also have an impact on the way things are going in the world right now are not taking things in a good direction, right? Just to keep it as high level as possible. But then we talk to people like Sabine who are dedicating their lives and their gifts and their passion to like actually making a difference in people's lives. And honestly, it just felt very, very inspiring talking to her about listening to her really about her life's work.
Yeah, this brings me back personally. Yeah, I had a brief stint working in a refugee camp down in Greece, and there was a similar need back then for these kind of activities. Now, at the time we called them gap-filling activities. So the gap being you've got the big organizations, the governments, the UN, all the big boys, concentrating on the logistics, making sure that the camps are set up and that the process happens. But the gap is, in the meantime, and oftentimes, as you mentioned, the process may not be as effective as one may think, right? And you've got waiting times of a couple of years, perhaps. And so in the meantime, what do you do, right? And you've got children populations in these camps, some of them fleeing horrendous situations, and it's important to not let them stew in that new environment with that associated trauma, and so I think it's an often overlooked part of humanitarian work is this idea of trying to get people, and especially children who are particularly influenceable and particularly vulnerable to these experiences, and getting them out of that mindset and making sure that they've got the ability to maybe not move on in a sense of forgetting about it, but moving past, working with the stuff that they've learned and making sure that it doesn't define them, and moving on. And bringing it back to Sabine, she has made this her life work, and it's clear from the way she talks about it that not only is it a passion of hers, but it's truly a vital part of these experiences. Whether it's people dealing with the current war in Lebanon, or people who've managed to flee Gaza, or any other humanitarian situation in the world, like this is a vital component of it.
Yeah, 100%. And, personally, I just thought one of the most inspiring things about the work that Sabine is doing is that, her and her team, I just feel like most people in the world see any given disaster anywhere, sometimes even in the places where they're from, right? And I think the most common reaction from people from any given country is to say, that is so terrible. I hope someone does something about it, right?
Yeah.
Sabine is in that rare category of people who are actually doing something about it,
Yeah.
And, for as long as we're doing this podcast, I hope that we can talk to people like her and meet people like her and spotlight the work that they're doing, because it's more people need to know about that. We talk about, we want to look behind the headlines on this podcast, and something I'm realizing more and more, after each interview, is that behind the headlines, there's not only tragedy, of course, but there's hope. There's people like Sabine who are actually uh, a proactive force for good in the world.
Definitely. And she made a good point at the end of showcasing how her work even helps her mentally dealing with all this stuff. And, everything we talk about on this podcast, I mean, none of it is easy to digest listening to, let alone working in. And it's okay to, or rather, it's important to make sure that you've got that ability to surround yourself with people, to laugh, right? This is something that comes up a lot in the interview, but not to make light of the situation, obviously, but to make sure that you are able to feel positive emotions as well. And I think perhaps some of the people listening to this, care about all of these situations, and it's very easy to care, and it's very easy to want to help everyone and anything. And as a result, you can find yourself often thinking, perhaps that you're not able to help enough as much as you'd want to. But it's the small things that matter. And, first and foremost, take care of yourself. And I think it's important for all of us in this field to do so. And Sabine is just an example of what can be achieved when you take care of yourself and you take care of others.
Yeah, 100%. And the last thing I'll say about this interview before we jump over to that, and people can hear from Sabine herself, is that I was very grateful that she spoke about the children from southern Lebanon, because if you are someone who hasn't followed these things for very long, just Google southern Lebanon, right? Tell me what headlines you see, click on some of the stories, tell me what some of the themes are that you see in the way that part of the country and that war is discussed. And I guarantee you that you are unlikely to see people talking about, uh, one, things on like a human level. This is how this war is actually destroying and impacting lives. And two, specifically that impact on children. And so, I was very grateful that we were able to find someone who can speak to that specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's keep it there from our side. And for now, ladies and gentlemen, we give you Sabine Choucair.
Good morning, and thanks so much for being here. To start off, can you introduce yourself and tell our listeners about your background and your mission with Clown Me In?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I'm Sabine Choucair. I'm a humanitarian clown. I come from Lebanon, and I founded a group of clowns and performers in Lebanon called Clown Me In. And we do a lot of humanitarian clowning, shows in conflict zones and for people post-conflict, refugee camps and places that have gone through natural disasters. So we do a lot of clown shows. We work on the streets as well. We do street shows inspired or taken from or based on stories that we collect from people. We work a lot with games and playfulness and laughter. Yeah, that's it, I guess.
Oh, we'll be getting into the details of everything that you just mentioned, but I was curious to hear a bit more about your personal background. So, as we understand it, your personal journey started off more in the performance sector rather than the humanitarian one. So, could you bring us back to that beginning and how did that all start? I understand that you started off with television at a very young age. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. So I grew up during the Civil War, and then when it ended, there was one TV program for kids, and I was one of the hosts of the program. I was 8 years old or 9 years old, and I kept doing this for 3 years. I was dancing, hosting the show, doing a lot of things, singing, performing in a way. And then I was hosting different TV programs for a long time, actually until I was 21 or more, until I decided to stop everything. And also I studied theater in Lebanon, and then I went to London to study performing arts, and that's basically where I got introduced to clowning. And that's when I decided I'll stop everything else and dedicate my life to clowning. And that's it. That was it. um, yeah. So I went from, being a TV host and a performer, a theater performer, to being a full time clown.
For some of our listeners who may not be familiar really with what clowning is and what that looks like to learn it and then for you to incorporate in your life, could you give just a definition perhaps or your understanding of clowning as an art form?
Yeah, I'll give my understanding of clowning more because clowning is so many different things. And when you say clowning, people think about birthday clowns, like big hair, big shoes, but that's not really the clowning I do. Or so it's more the personal clown. This, like, it's a state of being, a state of vulnerability, of being, transparent and vulnerable with people, um of having, like, taking everything you like about yourself and everything you hate, and then showing it times 100 to people and sharing it in that moment, and accepting to have people laugh at your failure and at your transparency and vulnerability. And this opens up a space of truth and common vulnerability, I would say, between us and the audience. So basically accepting people to laugh at the clown. That's mostly. And we don't have big hair, we don't have makeup on the face, we just have a red nose, and even sometimes we perform without a red nose. That's why I say it's more of a state of being that's vulnerable and hopeful at the same time.
I imagine that takes a great deal of self-confidence. And at what point did
Yeah.
you, at what point did you realize that this is something that you could use and leverage as a humanitarian service?
Yeah, so I think it was like the minute I really discovered my clown in London. It was through school with Giovanni Fazzetti. And this process, during the process, I was like, wow, there was a magical moment where I was like, oh my God, this clown, my clown, this um, very army like clown that thinks the whole world is against her, paranoid, extremely paranoid, gave me a sense of freedom, of like this moment of realization that, like, oh my God, I can laugh at like all these small moments where I feel paranoid, or all these like reactions, ridiculous reactions I have that come from all the baggage I have from my whole life, and I'm accepting people to laugh at that. And this was the click where I felt like, this, like, that life made sense to me in a way, like, okay, I've always loved working with people, and I've always used theater as a means to work with people in different situations and moments of life. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stop everything else and just gonna use clowning with people. If it did this to me, I'm sure it's gonna do wonders with people as well. And I stopped everything and I started my journey as a humanitarian clown, where I actually didn't even know that there's humanitarian clowning existed in the world. I did not grow up seeing clowns. I did not grow up knowing about clowns. I did not grow up in a space where, this was a thing. So I was just discovering this by doing it. And then, I started in 2006 or 2007, and it wasn't until 2011 or 12 that I met somebody from Clowns Without Borders. And I was like, oh my God, they're doing the same thing. Okay, let's do things together.
So when it comes to your work inside Lebanon itself, obviously you've done an incredible amount and we have questions for you about all of it. But when we were talking a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that you worked a lot with children from the Dahia neighborhood of Beirut. And I think for international audiences, that's a part of Beirut and of Lebanon that they only hear about from a very far removed perspective, always to do with war and, again, like a very far removed geopolitical perspective. But we want to talk to you about the children from that that part of Beirut and from southern Lebanon as well, because we don't think that people hear enough about them. So what do you wish that the world knew about these kids, uh, and kids from southern Lebanon in general? And what other stories that people don't hear in international media?
First, we'll have to acknowledge that they're like every other kid. They're beautiful kids that have beautiful, or had beautiful lives and places to live, and lands, and that they grew up only knowing war and going from one war to the other, and mostly the kids of the South. And there's something beautiful about the people of the south of Lebanon. They're very generous, and they really have this attachment to the land. They have the best, olive trees and the best fields, the most beautiful fields, the best fruit and vegetables, and they're really attached to the land. And when you're really attached to the land, that makes you an even more beautiful human being. And I say this because it's so painful that now they're losing all of this. They're now in shelters in Beirut. They've been detached from their land. And the land has been, I would say, I don't know, raped by the Israelis. I mean, I can't find the words for what's being done. Um, and so that's important to acknowledge. I've been working with people from the south mostly for so many years, because before this war, we've been working in the south on what was left from the previous Israeli wars, the awful, mines that the Israelis left in the south. So 10 years ago, we started doing mines awareness in the south, because there was a lot of mines that were left from previous wars. So I've been working with them for quite a long time, and then in this war, or let's say the previous one, it's absurd how many wars we've gone through. War number 3, war number 5, war number 10. So let's say in 2024, after the war in 2024, we did a special show for kids in the south and in Dahye, specifically about PTSD and anxiety and depression. And so we worked with 2 psychiatrists based in the US who came to Lebanon and did like a lab with us on all the effects of war on kids and adolescents post-war, and what they can do, or first to not to normalize this, but to make sure to let kids know. We'll call them all children because they're all children, between 0 and 18 years old. So all the children face that, we wanted to tell them it's normal, it's okay if you're feeling depressed, it's okay if you have PTSD from sounds, it's okay if you have anxiety. These are normal feelings post-war. And here's what you can do. You can talk to someone. You can be like, you can go to nature. You can do some sports to move, and all these other things. So we worked on these details, and we put them all in a clown show that we took to the south and to Dahye, and we had a conversation after each show with the children about it. And it was beautiful because they could see themselves in the clowns on stage, and we've had beautiful conversations and also beautiful moments of connection with the kids, because we interact a lot with the kids, and we've seen a lot of kindness from the kids watching. And we do we do a lot of interaction before the show. And I remember one time in Dahye, we were performing in a school that the kids of these schools, of this school specifically, had to leave because they got a warning from Afichai, from Israel, to leave the school in 15 minutes because they were going to bomb. So they lived through the trauma of like running out of the school before Israel would bomb. And so we performed in that same school for these same kids. And before the show, I really literally walk over the kids and like play with them as a clown. And there was this beautiful kid who have lost one arm because of the war, and he just like I looked, and he's like, don't worry, I'll help you. And then he took his other arm and helped me to pass, from one kid to the other. And it's just like, there's like, it's a beautiful moment of these kids like giving us hope in a way instead of, us giving them hope. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, beautiful way of being there.
And what sort of things do these kids want to talk about after a performance?
Well, a lot of them like to share their experience and how did they feel during the war, and they feel more comfortable, sharing this after the show for some reason, and mostly because they laughed a lot, because they've seen some of their experiences on stage, so they feel more comfortable talking about this. um yeah, they talked a lot about, the drone, the sound of drone, the fear of, losing loved ones, or things that they call the house of the war. There's something called the house of the war, and it's like the house they go to running away from war, and what it was like, and what did they do, what did they miss, what they when they were not there at home, their toys, the toys that they missed, yeah, things like that.
So you mentioned the drones there. Is that whether it's the drones or the mines in these performances? Is the goal then, to, if I understand correctly, to sort of expose them to these concepts and try and normalize their response to it? Is it a sort of exposure therapy in a sense?
It's kind of trying to change the image they have. So I'll give an example because it's just easier. So we would use a drone sound during the performance. And then, of course, and it's not, and the we don't want to re-traumatize people. Like, we're very careful about not re-traumatizing them by exposing them to, like, traumatizing experiences. So let me make it very clear that we are clowns, so everything is a game, and kids and games is the language of children. That's what they understand most. So between us and them, we have the same language, we understand each other, because there's a lot of, like, people who come and who are like, oh my god, are you, like, doing, like, are you dying on stage, you're showing death on stage, like, this is like re-traumatization, blah blah blah. And where I'm like, no, calmate, like, chill. It's we know, we speak the same language, we're on the same, it's like when I was a kid and growing up during war, and or let's not talk, like, we've seen kids in Gaza now playing funeral, and this is like a normal reaction for kids to get over this trauma, or to actually not get over it but accept it, and, like, continue and try to find ways to continue living, and to turn this thing into a game, to be able to accept it, and not, like, lose hope in life. So it's the same logic that we do with a clown show. I'll go back to the drone sound. So we have a drone sound during the show that comes, and then all the clowns, look up and are concerned. And this happens also to people watching. They're all like, oh my God, the drone. Because for those who don't know, drones are 24/7, or we're 24/7 on in Gaza, in Lebanon. It's a way of torturing people, emotionally and psychologically torturing people. So we hear the drone sound. Everybody looks, and then one of the clowns, like, follow the drone with a finger, and then takes the drone to the hand, and then bam, kills the drone, and it's actually killing a mosquito. And then the audience laughs and starts clapping, and it happened on every show we've done, and we've done more than 100 shows. with a drone sound, and it's always the same reaction. They go, "Oh, what is happening?" to feeling like a big relief, and there's a big laughter. And it's like turning this traumatizing moment, or this moment that's like constant in our lives, to a game. And having kids get in the game. Uh, and so hoping that next time they hear a drone, instead of remembering the war, they'll remember this moment when the clown killed the mosquito.
It's really a truly creative way of dealing with it. It's really
I
great
hope
to
so.
hear. um, and I just was curious to learn a bit more. Going on your website, there's a lot of references to a couple of years back how you and Clown Me In dealt with the COVID pandemic. And there's lots of photos with you in your clown costume with your nose, but you're wearing the mask as well. And
Yeah.
what were some of how was that experience? What were some of the extra considerations, if any, that you had to take into account back then?
I mean, sadly, again, since we're from Lebanon, there's always a disaster after a disaster. We're full of disasters in that sense, which, makes me laugh, because what else can we do? Anyway, during COVID, we've had the port explosion in 2020, August 2020, and us clowns, we go where disasters are, and in Lebanon, disasters come to us. We're so lucky. So there was COVID, and the port explosion happened, and the first 2 weeks we went and started cleaning the streets and helping people in that sense, and then we were like, what are we doing? Like, we're clowns, and that's not what we do. Like, I can clean shattered glass from the ground, but let's just clown around. And so we decided to start performing. And since we perform only on the streets, we were like, okay, the COVID-wise, it's okay to be in open spaces. And then we thought about what's the best way to do it in the most safe way. So we decided to put N95 masks and put the clown nose on top of it. And it was a big challenge for us, because our faces were, they could only see our eyes. But then we had our bodies, and then we tried to be thought I mean, it was like, to be honest, between the pandemic, the disaster of the pandemic, and the disaster of the port explosion, we thought, let's focus on the port explosion and what it's doing to people. 300,000 people had to flee Beirut. There was a lot of like 200 something, 250 dead. I'm not sure about the numbers. Like, they're not very specific, but there was like a sense of despair in Beirut. It was very gray, very sad. And so we felt, let's clown around, and we started going to the areas where people were most affected. And I remember, like, 3 weeks in, or no, a month in, we were performing in one of the places, and in a garden. And then we got a call after, from a woman who called the organization we were performing with. And she said there was a girl who hadn't spoken for the whole month after the explosion. And after the show, she went back and she told her father about the show, like, in details. And basically, she spoke, and it was the first time she speaks after the explosion. And we're like, oh, maybe it's a coincidence, but also we'd like to think that it's the magic of clowning. It's the magic of bringing people together, laughing, and feeling, relaxed and enjoy like this moment, this 1 hour together with other human beings. Um, yeah, and feeling like, oh, I'm relaxed enough to be able to speak or to get my voice back.
So, when we last spoke, you told me about how part of your personal mission in life is not only performance, but storytelling. And you told me a little bit about the Caravan project that you started to support Syrian refugees. So, on a human level, what drives you to focus on telling the stories of these communities that you work with? And can you explain the Caravan project and how you use that to tell some of these stories?
Yeah, sure. So I've always believed like what links us, what brings us together in life are stories, our common stories. And we all live kind of the same big, there they say there's like big six stories in life that connect us, and it's the details that change. And I've always been a big believer that storytelling, it is what will save us all. Nothing is saving us anyway, but I'd like to have some hope in life. And for the caravan in 2015, the Syrian revolution started earlier on, but in 2014 and 15, a lot of Syrian refugees started coming to Lebanon, and there was a lot of hostility in many places in Lebanon, and I felt we need to connect. We need to connect in a way. And the best way to do it is by collecting stories from people who are coming from the Syrians. Who are they? They're not numbers. Who are these people? What is their story? What are they going through? And I started collecting stories from like 5 different camps by like doing a lot of workshops with them. So I spent 3 months in these camps, going daily and working with the same groups of people to collect stories that are not the first stories people tell, because the first stories people tell are things they want you to hear. But then if you stay with them and dig deeper, you collect more personal, simple stories. And really, we recorded very simple stories from people. And then we casted people who would like to perform, and then we worked from these same from the same camps, and then we worked with them for 3 months on. We gave them acting and workshops, and then we came up with a show with them based on the stories we collected. So we collected the stories, we recorded them, we edited them, and then we trained 6 performers, non-performers, to become performers. And we put a performance together on a caravan, on the top of the caravan, and a small theater in front of it. And so we would listen to the recorded stories told by the people who lived them in their voices, in their way. And then we would see the performers doing some physical theater on these performances. And we went and performed this in all over Lebanon, in 50 different places. And then we took the performance to Tunisia also with these stories. And then throughout the years, we've been doing different performances. Like we have 5 different caravan performances, and all based on collected stories. We've done one in Sweden based on the stories of immigrants, of people who immigrated to Sweden, and of people, of Swedes who are now in the US, who immigrated to the US. It's just like, you know, we all are refugees in a way. We just need to get these stories together. So that's what we did in Sweden, because also, there's always hostility anywhere we go. And like, yeah, let's talk about Swedes who are in the US now. Are they treated the same way they're treated, the Syrians or Palestinians or Iraqis or Iranians are treated in Europe now? No, they're not. Let's talk about that. through stories and through storytelling. So that's the caravan. And now we're doing a new caravan production, and it's based on stories of youth in Lebanon, or people between 18 and 24. And it's it's coming from a personal desire to know what what is this generation thinking about, what are their stories, how are they living, and especially after the wars and now during the war now that is happening.
So, sort of linked to the idea of storytelling, and you touched on it briefly earlier, is the idea of laughter, which there's a recent social media post from Clown Me In about your ongoing work in Lebanon, where you said, and I quote here, "We resist through laughter and play, and we will keep resisting for our country and for humanity always." I think that's a great post. That's a great line. Talk to us about the importance of laughter as resistance, both for children and for communities impacted by war.
Yes, I mean, I'll have to say, like, we like to use the word resistance and not resilience, because I feel resilience is a word that it's like we've always been colonized, and this is another word of the colonizers. Oh, you guys are so resilient. No, we're not resilient. We are, this is called resistance. We you know, so that's important to put out here. And I think laughter, um laughter is important, and if we don't laugh, and laughter for me is as important as first aid when there's any disaster, because we need this moment for us to feel okay. We need this moment to have a little hope to be able to continue going. And the effect of laughter on the body physiologically, like physically and emotionally, is so big. It boosts the adrenaline. It's really better than any pills that we take. And it's a way of opening up. It lets our bodies release tension. So when we release tension, we open up, and when we open up, we connect better with the other. And when we connect better with the other, we feel supported, and we feel that we're not alone. And I'm sorry if this is like a lot of like philosophy behind it, but this is like actual things that we feel when we clown in hard moments. It's like facts that happen. And I feel like anything, like for us, clowning is a serious business. We take it very, very seriously. We take serious issues and we clown around them. Because if we don't do that, I don't know how we can survive.
I wanted to briefly ask you, a couple of years back, you got a prize from Italy,
Yeah,
the Clown nel Cuore, the Clown in the Heart prize.
yeah,
How was
yeah.
that experience?
Oh, it was, I mean, it was really beautiful. It's really nice um, to feel valued, about the work I do. I've always, it's when I started, everybody was like, what? You want to be a full-time clown? Are you crazy? Like, what are you doing? Or when I started trying to convince people in Lebanon that I want to do clowning for communities, and I went to all different kinds of, NGOs and foundations, and I was like, please let me use clowning. They all looked at me like I'm a moron or something. And it was really beautiful to feel like appreciated, and to feel like somebody uh yes, somebody knows the value of the humanitarian clowning. So it was beautiful. I'm really I was thrilled. I was like, yeah, I was very happy that this happened. And I think like every small, it's not about the price, it's not about the award, it's about the appreciation. And every small thing like that is helps in the mission we do and in the cause we do. And maybe clowning nowadays is more in. Like now everybody wants to do clowning. People started seeing the value of clowning for mental health and in therapy. But when I started, it was like a big fight for me in 2006. So it's nice. It helps. It helps. I would say it helps.
You've also done a tremendous amount of work internationally outside of Lebanon, including right here in Turkey. So what stories come to mind for you when you think of your response to the earthquake zone of southern Turkey from a few years ago?
I mean, I would say that working in the earthquake zone was harder for me personally than working in conflict zones and war zones. And it might be a very personal experience because I've gone through war. So maybe the way I see people when I go to war zones or like post war zones is different because I have I don't know. It's like I've been there. I've lived that, so it's easier for me than going to uh to the earthquake zone was so hard, so hard, and really like the first trip we did was only for 6 days, and I really had to take 2 weeks after it to just like breathe and try to get over what I've seen. There was 50,000 people died in like 1 minute and a half. Um, and the destruction, just seeing how, seeing the destroyed buildings, the destruction was out of this world. I've never seen anything like it. Meeting people. I mean, the first show we did there, we started performing, and then all of a sudden, like a minute in, I look and everybody was like, like they had big eyes. They stopped breathing and they were all looking in one direction. So I looked at this direction, and there was one pole, one big pole, and then one of the adults said, everybody is worried that if this pole falls, it will fall on you all. So we stopped the show. We took the whole audience, and then we went and performed in a different place. But it's like this moment of like you see the effect of like, and it was a pole and we were just next to it, but the way they saw it, the trauma that was like, and it happened for all of them at the same time. And I think it was a moment where there was like a wind that came. So the wind came, and it was that moment that triggered the fear. So yeah, so working in the earthquake zone, I had to also think about all, like, I learned by doing, of course, like, what do we have to think about? How do we decide where to perform? How do we approach people? Do we approach because we went like really right after the earthquake, 2-3 weeks in? How do we approach them? Do we approach them with big energy, or do we approach them with like less energies, calmer kind of music, small bubbles, not to have like a big reaction? I'm thinking about all these details that would, and we opted for like calmer way in some places, and more energetic way in some other places. So depending on where we are, and also thinking about all these people who went from having a house, an apartment, to going to living in tents, and it was super cold, extremely cold. It was February, March in Turkey. And for those who don't know, it's really, really cold there. It was really cold. And these people were like going through this on top of the trauma, and then thinking about, let's say, Syrians who were there, who actually had to flee war and then went, and they were in the south of Turkey, and then they had another trauma of the earthquake. So trauma on top of a trauma on top of a trauma. Yeah.
And so outside of Turkey, where else have you performed? I'm assuming you've gone to other countries as well. And I just want to add a question to that. Have you noticed similarities in the reactions and the traumas and the experiences of people depending on all the situations and also in their reactions to your show?
Yeah. So I've performed a lot everywhere. I don't know. I've performed between 2014 and 2019 or 20, before the pandemic. I was going every year, doing the Balkan route: Macedonia, Serbia, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania. So I was following the refugee route. So I was performing there every year. I've performed in Sweden, in Germany, following the refugees as well who went to Europe. I've performed in so many places in the, in the Arab world: Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Iraq. And basically, following disasters. I've performed in Mexico, in Brazil, with the Maya community, with, in India. I've spent 3 months in India performing for different communities there. And I think what's common is everybody likes to laugh. Despite disasters, despite despair, everybody likes to laugh. And even in the hardest and most terrible moments, like in Lesbos, one of the Greek islands, one time, a boat capsized and 400 people were on it, and I think only 100 made it to the shore, and the rest died. And it was a disaster. The whole night was a disaster. But the following morning, we got a call from one of the camps there asking us to come and perform. And it's basically because people needed, within this despair, to feel, to get a moment of laughter, to take a small break, to release. So that's what's common everywhere. Of course, traumas are different, but we don't. In our clown show, the most of it is actually just clowns doing silly things. So the reactions are always laughing on silly things, and some communities laugh on things that others don't. But there's a lot of common laughter all through, all around these countries I've performed in. I've been doing the same skit for the past. I have a marriage scene that I do, and I marry, usually, like, before the show or during the show, I ask, who's the man or woman who you hate the most or who you love the most in the audience. I asked, like, okay, the organization or some of the kids or something, and then I marry this person, and every time people love it, they laugh. Also, it's like, so this is common. Everybody laughs at that. I just changed the music at the end, the marriage music. I just put, I'm like, okay, who are we performing for today? Okay, we're performing for Turks. Let's use a Turkish marriage song. And then we change it. But yeah, I guess even if traumas are different, laughter is a common language.
So I'm curious, do you and your partners have anyone that you are either working with remotely or just communicating with in Gaza right now? Is it even possible to work on anything for children in Gaza right now?
So we've had a team of because we also do psychosocial support. We have a project called CAPE, Creative Art for Peace, and we use creative art for peace. A bit self-explanatory. We've had partners in Gaza that sadly we lost contact with, and uh, we only have one woman that we know is still there and is still trying to do something. We've been in touch with the Gaza Circus group, and we've lately talked about because obviously we can't go, nobody can go, and so we've talked about the Gaza Circus group. They're doing a lot of clown shows there, so we might be doing some online sharing ideas and expertise, telling them what has been working in Lebanon, and then they could try it there. But I know for a fact that for them it's harder because I think they're going through what I've gone through in 2000 when I started in 2006 and 7 of like trying to convince people there that clowning works in places of disaster.
I wanted to ask you, um, in terms of setting up the performances that you do, regardless of the situation and the people, um, how do you and your teammates prepare for those live performances? And specifically, are there any considerations you take with regards to the audience in terms of maybe like a safe word or communication? So is there anything that any trade secrets in a sense that you guys have in that regard?
I mean, first we think about who are we going to perform for? In Lebanon, we're quite, it's easy for us because we're Lebanese. We know it's easier. But I'm mostly talking about somewhere else, like who's our audience, what they've gone through, and then we have a show that works everywhere in all cases, and then sometimes we try to take a specific moments or specific things that this community has gone through, and we turn it into a skit, a clown skit. That's like artistically speaking. But then also on the ground, we make sure to go only to places where we're invited. So we have local grassroots organization who is inviting us. They know the people. We trust that they trust us and people trust them. So we know when we go, people trust us by default because we're coming with this organization, and this is important for us. So, and that's one thing. Another thing we think about is safety, our safety and the audience's safety. So of course we have a safe word. Any clown can say it if they are in danger or they feel something is very dangerous, and when they say it, we don't ask questions. We take our stuff and we run to the van. We have the van parked in the emergency parking position. So it's parked in a way that if you have to leave straight away, we can jump in the van and the van leaves, like no cars in front of it. We try always to have a driver in the van, so ready to leave to depart at any point. Not that we rarely needed this, but we put this as like, this is our, safety. Sometimes we're performing and somebody comes and kicks us out. So we have this, we try to perform with something to our backs, like in front of a wall or something. So we try not to have the audience come and, if sometimes we have to perform in a 360 degrees. We try not to do a lot of these 360 degrees unless we know that we're in a school. What else? We try to have one person who's not a performer or can be a performer, but not in a clown costume, to be like, doing like all the technical stuff, but also looking at making sure there's no problems happening with the audience, because a lot of times we perform for audiences who are, even they don't talk to each other, hostile communities, communities who are living in the same place but are not very friendly to each other, but they come and watch our show. So we try also to have somebody who's like aware that there won't be any problems happening. Yeah, I think that's really it.
Sabine, you've been very generous with your time, and we're close to wrapping up here. But before we go, I'm curious. We've talked a lot about ways in which you and your team have helped kids and communities work through their trauma and these very difficult experiences. But as the main performer in these situations, how do you ensure that you're taking care of yourself and your team's mental health, both in the long term, and if nothing else, to make sure that you have the strength and the energy to keep performing and keep doing your job?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot as a group between shows. Like before every show, we do check in, and after every show, we do checkouts, and so we talk a lot during the process. I personally journal a lot during tours, and I post, through like under the hashtag Diaries of a Clown, and then after the performance, we try to have sessions with psychologists and therapists, group sessions. So we do that. During the war last time, we've had sessions with the same psychiatrist who worked with us on the show. We've had sessions every Tuesday with them the whole time, because it wasn't only us going to perform, but it was also the team living through war the whole time. So they would, wake up under the bombs, go perform under the bombs, come back and stay under the bombs. So it was pretty heavy. So we've had weekly follow-up. We do a lot of somatics, and yeah, I mean, we try our best. But there's also something very valuable in what we do, that because we go to places and we saw that we see the instant reactions of people and the excess of laughter, it's in a way healing as well. And the most healing things for us is our rehearsal time, because we laugh so much. I mean, we laugh at our own jokes. We play a lot while rehearsing. It's really enjoyable, like super enjoyable, and it helps us as a team.
Well, Sabine, it's been really fascinating, and it's been an honor to talk to you. And as Andrew said, wanted to thank you for the time that you've taken to chat with us. Before we do leave, one of the things that we try and do at the end of every episode is empower our listeners to take action and offer them ways in which they can help. And so, as a starter, if they wanted to learn more about Clown Me In, if they wanted to see how they can help out your mission and your work, where can they go? Where can they find all this stuff?
So they can find all the information on our website, clownbn.com. There's also, if they'd like to donate, there's a donation link there. There's one that's like specifically in the US, and it's 501k tax something free. Uh, sorry, I should know these things. I have the American passport, but I keep not understanding anything. So anyway, there's the link there, and they can. And I would say, as what's really important for us is to we put a lot on our Instagram, a lot of stories, a lot of posts, and it's really for us, like sharing these stories is important. So even if they, sharing is one big way of helping us, because it's also sharing the stories of people we work with, and valuing like the people, the communities we work with and for.
Well, we'll be sure to link all of that out and to follow through. But Sabine, thank you so much for your time. It's really been great talking, and stay in touch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, thank you guys.
This has been an episode of the St. Martin's Cloak Podcast. Today is May 8th, 2026. Thank you for listening, and stay safe.